was interesting. These comments by Carlo Ancelotti in the Italian press suggesting that teams won't fancy going off to the Club World Cup because they make a whole lot more money playing lucrative friendlies in far-flung corners of the world. I mean, I wonder if this is going to be the start of a bit of a backlash. I wonder if he'll, he's made these comments in the newspaper. I wonder if he'll step away from. He seemed to be kind of talking for the club. It almost sounded like they'd had internal discussions already.
Well, it feels to me that it's a typically phlegmatic response from Ancelotti, and we've seen it already start with the players. We've seen the players say, well, we had Antoine Griezmann, Kylian Mbappe, two really big name players, come out and say, look, something has to be done about the calendar. We need to have more of a say in the sport if this is the way it's going to be. Now it's gone up to the coaches, and the clubs are next. And I think for him to point out that the simple economics of it, that, you're talking about a club in Real Madrid that has battled to form a Super League, not because it thinks it's a better format or anything like that, but because it wants the right, along with Barcelona, to organise its own competition. So it doesn't matter if it's a league that lasts for 5 years, a straight knockout, whatever. It doesn't matter. What they want is to take it away from UEFA and really have their own little money factory. So the money comes directly to them and there is no middleman. And so this is clearly where Real Madrid's line of thinking has been for a while. So of all the things that you can pull FIFA up for, like not respecting the players, not respecting the calendar, not having any sense of there being a possible saturation point or anything like that, they've overlooked the money bit, which is extraordinary, really.
Yeah, I mean, it would completely devalue the tournament if Real Madrid aren't there. I mean, it
won't be just them, of course.
No.
It would never just be them in isolation. If they were to pull out, the rest will fall like dominoes. There's no doubt about it. And you'll probably end up with a situation where the competition is what it always has been. The champions of each continent. I guess it puts Gianni Infantino and FIFA in such a weak position, though, because if the clubs turn around and do this, well, have they got the money to give them a bigger cut? What do the players demand in return for that? And if they have to go back to the original format or something a bit reduced, then what do they do to the people who've agreed to host it? It leaves FIFA in a terrible spot.
And UEFA don't like the tournament anyway, so there's no way they're going to strong arm the UEFA teams into taking part. So yeah,
no, they're not. But this whole thing is again, it's not really about the tournament itself. It's a power battle between UEFA and FIFA to who can commodify football the most. But the thing that they've not really thought about is the players. Now, this isn't the three of us sitting here and saying, oh, well, maybe they should have more of a rest, because I think what FIFA have really looked at is the fact that there's not really much public sympathy for that point of view. Now, whether we can sit down logically and say, well, players do need a rest, however much money they're getting paid. They need mental as well as physical rest, that we as the public are paying for a substandard product if they're playing every 2.5 to 3 days. So the joke's kind of on us anyway. But, if it comes to this point where that is happening, where the players just say no, and the clubs say no, well, FIFA haven't got anything left to commodify, have they?
Staying with Real Madrid and Spanish football generally has taken a lot of criticism, quite rightly, of having a bit of a soft soap attitude towards racism in the game in Spain. It's certainly a lot of that directed at Vinicius Junior, Real Madrid. Now 3 Valencia fans have been jailed for 8 months for abusing him at the Mestalla last year.
Yeah, they have, but which is only right, of course. But I don't think we should get celebrating too much. One, because we shouldn't celebrate something that happened that shouldn't have happened anyway. Never mind if the people involved got their just desserts. And also, I don't think Spanish football can start slapping itself on the back too quickly, because, this is a problem that's been going on for a long time. There have been loads of other incidents involving not just Vinicius Junior, of course, but other players. He is the most visible target, I suppose. But as well, you've got to bear in mind that Netflix are making a documentary about Vinicius Junior at the moment, and they wanted to do a little part of the documentary on him returning to Valencia for the first time since he was abused there. And Valencia refused the camera crew entry. They just didn't give them accreditation, the Brazilian camera crew that were going to come in and film that part of the documentary. And Javier Tebas, the president of La Liga, didn't step in. He said, well, they're within their rights to do that.
Wow. So. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, as you say, a long way to go. And you probably find it'll be reduced on appeal, and that won't play particularly well either, because, you know, the assumption will be that, you know, it was a gesture, and we'll see what happens, but
yeah, we'll see.
Elsewhere,
friendly tonight, which is a bit surprising, so close to the tournament, isn't it? Holland are playing.
Yes, there's been a few friendlies over the weekend, Andy.
Yeah, they have, and while we've been wringing our hands with what happened at Wembley on Friday night, you've got similar things in other big European countries. Portugal were turned over by Croatia on Saturday at Jamor, the national stadium. It was meant to be, again, a really celebratory send-off, and it all went a little bit flat, and Croatia looked pretty good. And last night we had Italy really squeezing past Bosnia, and Bosnia were much better than they were in Newcastle this time last week, by the way. And then you had France not even managing to score past Canada, who just come off the back of a 4-0 tonking at Holland in the Netherlands. So, I mean, everyone's having the same discussion. The French newspapers this morning were completely freaking out over the France performance. The fact, of course, that they're having to be careful with Kylian Mbappe's fitness. He had a back and a knee issue that meant he was limited to only playing 20 minutes at the end. They've got defensive difficulties. Interestingly, William Saliba came in and I think really put himself in the picture for a starting place. Even though there are no guarantees yet, it looked as if they would start the tournament with him not in the 11. Maybe now Didier Deschamps is having second thoughts, but he's got injury concerns over Tchouaméni, who's not played for a month or so. Adrien Rabiot, who's almost certainly not going to be fit for the first match. And it looks like N'Golo Kante, after that surprise recall after a couple of years, will probably start their first game.
His attitude to Saliba is odd, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people would think he's the best, apart from Van Dijk, the best defender in the Premier League.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's odd, because I mean, we've had this conversation about Gareth Southgate a lot of times, haven't we? You know, Southgate is not unique amongst international coaches. Didier Deschamps is cut from the same cloth in that they're inherently conservative. You know, they stick with the guys who do good for them every international window. And, you know, it has to get to a point where your club form's absolutely terrible, maybe even worse than that, for you to get dropped. I mean, you look at Harry Maguire and, you know, a couple of years of bad form that he managed to ride out and stay in the England team. And it's been the same with Dayot Upamecano in France. He's had a really, really bad season for Bayern Munich. He's gone from a good defender who's made a few costly errors to someone who makes a lot of errors, who has the occasional decent game, which is obviously not great for the team who are going to be one of the favourites going into the competition. But of course, he's trusted. Interestingly, he played beside Saliba. It wasn't Saliba playing instead of him. So we'll see what pairing Deschamps picks for the first game against Austria.
A little bit of transfer news. There's a bit of a tug of love in the Manchester clubs for João Neves. Benfica in Portugal. We'll see him in action, I'm sure, over the next few weeks. He's only 19. Apparently, Benfica might take a bid of 85 million. They've rejected smaller ones so far. But Bernardo Silva says, come and join us at City. Manchester United interested. I mean, some player by the sound of it, Andy.
Yeah, he's a really good player. You could see why he'd work in the Premier League, box to box, amazing energy, amazing stamina, can tackle, can find the pass as well. And it's been clear for a long time that he would be going to a really big club at the end of this season that's just finished. Benfica are a briefing at the moment. They won't let him go for anything less than the clause, which off the top of my head is about 110 million euros. Wow. So bear in mind that João Felix, Enzo Fernandez have gone for money above the clause before. Of course, Atletico Madrid and Chelsea respectively, effectively buying the right to pay the clause in installments, so paying more than the buyout sum. So I don't know whether that will be the case. I mean, if you look at the fact there are some pretty high bids rolling in already, I suspect, and other people in Portugal suspect, that there is maybe a place up for grabs in the centre of midfield alongside João Palhinha, who of course is also being linked with the move. So if João Neves takes that, if he has some good games, I think by the end of the group stage, we're looking at that clause being touched or maybe even tipped over, a little bit like Enzo Fernandez at the 2022 World Cup.
Yeah, I'm just wondering about this year's transfer window, though, whether there'll be such big fees. I think clubs are really wary now of spending 100 million on one player.
Well, I think it's a big problem for Antonio Conte at Napoli, Andy, because ideally, I don't need to tell you he's got expensive taste.
Yeah.
So clearly he's going to want to restructure a team that did really badly last season, and he will have told them that already. The plan was to fund it through selling Victor Osimhen. And as I was saying to Danny on Trans Europe Express last night, the problem is they want to sell Osimhen. Osimhen wants to go. They signed him to a new contract with a clause to make him more accessible to Europe's top clubs. But because of PSR here, the fact that in France and Italy, or less of an issue for Italy because I don't think he's going to move within Italy, but I think we're looking at Paris Saint-Germain, for example, in France, they've got expiring TV deals. So they don't really know how much is in the pot for next season. Now, that's a huge problem because Osimhen is expensive, not just fee-wise, but wage-wise. There are agent obligations, etc., etc., etc. Remember when he signed for Napoli in the first place, Rino Gattuso, who was in charge of Napoli, took a pay cut so that they could sign Victor Osimhen. And now, he's a bona fide world star. The problem is they want to sell Osimhen, keep Kvaratskhelia. There's more of a market for Kvaratskhelia than there is for Osimhen at the moment. So Conte's got to square that circle.
Before I let you go, Andy, we're going to set you to work. We're going to take a look at who'll be joining our all-star lineup with Nissan Vans.
The all-star lineup on talkSPORT with Nissan Vans. Accelerate your business with Nissan's all-star van lineup. Find out more at nissan.co.uk.
Basically, Andy, we'd like to choose a player from the weekend's football that stood out and deserves a pat on the back.
I'm going to go for a lesser-known name. I'm going to go Ante Budimir of Croatia. Croatia, as I said, a very impressive win in Portugal for them. Budimir got the winner. Now, I think if you look at Croatia in the last tournament or two, they've got an amazing midfield, of course, lacking really that centre forward. Well, maybe Budimir can be it. Came very close to being top scorer in La Liga, almost as many goals as Dovbyk and Jude Bellingham. And he was really a journeyman until his mid-20s in the second tier in Italy. Then he got a move to Mallorca, started scoring goals, has kept scoring goals for Osasuna. So if he can score so many goals for these unfashionable clubs in La Liga, what could he do at the front of a midfield like Croatia's?
Good stuff, Andy. We'll catch up with you, I'm sure, later in the week. Thanks very much.
Look forward to it. Cheers, fellas.
Paul Hawksbee and Andy Jacobs, Monday to Friday afternoons, 1 till 4. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.